Chapter 2. The Angel on the Moon. The room fell into a brief silence. After a few seconds, Dr. Lee came to his senses. A seraph? Yes. What was it doing? Nothing, I replied. It was like a golden statue, sitting in the middle of a vast lunar crater, looking up at Earth as if guarding. Dr. Lee rubbed his eyes, clearly frustrated. Chi, do you know how far the moon is from Earth? About 400,000 kilometers, I said calmly. 400,000 kilometers. Dr. Lee repeated the distance. Even with the most advanced telescopes, you can barely make out the moon's surface. And you, when you were 7, saw an angel on the moon just by lying under the eaves of your home? It wasn't me who saw it, I said softly. It saw me. I just looked up, and it was like my eyes were pulled through space to meet its gaze. So, it was forcing you to see it? Sort of. Otherwise, how would I have seen the moon's surface? I don't have supervision. But if there really was an angel on the moon, why hasn't anyone discovered it over all these years? I don't know. I shook my head. Maybe the seraph didn't want to be seen. Besides, do humans truly understand the moon? I spoke with such sincerity that Dr. Lee almost wanted to call a cab to send me back to the psychiatric hospital. After all, as a psychiatrist, Dr. Lee had seen a wide range of mental illnesses. Over the years, he had developed a rule. The more serious and seemingly reasonable the delusion sounded, the more severe the illness. What about your eyes? What's the story there? I reached up and gently touched the black satin covering my eyes, speaking without any visible emotion. That day, I made eye contact with it for a moment, and then I went blind. Dr. Lee opened his mouth, looked down at the case file in his hand, and fell silent. In the section about the cause of blindness, there were only 4 words written. Cause unknown. So, what really happened back then? Could it be, as I said, that I saw a seraph on the moon? Otherwise, how would you explain the sudden blindness? The thought barely crossed Dr. Lee's mind before he quickly dismissed it. Close call almost got led astray by a psychiatric patient. He could almost imagine the expressions of the doctors 10 years ago when young, blind me spoke those words. No wonder they kept me in the hospital. What I said was typical of the kind of delusions you'd hear from someone with severe mental illness. There were plenty of such patients in the hospital. Some claimed to be reincarnations of the Monkey King, hanging around on monkey bars all day. Others believed they were coat racks and stood motionless in their rooms all night. There were even those who mistook everyone for their spouses and would frequently grope others. Well, the last one was a greasy 40-year-old uncle. You're talking about things from the past. What about now? How do you view the situation? Dr. Lee adjusted his tone and continued the examination. It's all delusions, I said calmly. That day, I just accidentally fell from the eaves, hit my head on the ground, and as for my eyes, a nerve might have been damaged, causing the blindness. I had said this so many times, it was second nature to me. Dr. Lee raised his eyebrows, wrote something in the case file, and then chatted with me about daily life. After about 20 minutes, he checked the time, smiled, and stood up. Well, that's enough for today's checkup. Your condition seems to be fine. I hope you can adjust your mindset and live well. Dr. Lee shook my hand and offered some encouragement. I smiled and nodded. Hey, Dr. Lee, stay for a meal. Annie called out warmly as Dr. Lee was about to leave. No, I have another patient to see. I don't want to intrude. Dr. Lee politely said goodbye to Auntie and left through the door. As soon as the door closed, my smile vanished, as if it had never existed. Delusions. Huh. I murmured to myself, Brother, it's time to eat. My cousin Yang Jean came out of the kitchen, carrying dishes. Yang Jean, Auntie's son, was 4 years younger than me and had just started junior high. Since my parents went missing and I moved in with Andy, we had grown up together, closer than real brothers. Coming, I replied. As soon as I sat down at the small dining table, I felt a warm sensation at my feet. At first, I was startled, then a smile crept onto my face. My cousin Yang Jean glanced under the table and teased, You lazy little rascal, usually so sluggish, but when it's mealtime, you're the fastest one around. A small black mutt poked its head out from under the table, its tongue hanging out and panting. It approached me and licked my feet, looking up at me with an affectionate expression. 3 people, 1 dog. This was home. Simple, tough, but strangely reassuring. It had been like this for 10 years. I patted the dog's head, took took a piece of meat from the few remaining on the plate, and placed it in Yang Jin's bowl. Give it a bone. Yang Jin accepted without hesitation. Given our bond, there was no need for further discussion, but he was concerned about something else. Brother, are your eyes really getting better? I smiled slightly. Yes, I can see now, but I still can't handle bright light, so I'll need to keep this black satin on for a while. What a while. Annie told you that your eyes are too important. Even if you can see now, don't rush to take off the satin. If they get damaged by sunlight again, it'd be a shame. We should be cautious and keep it on a bit longer. Auntie hurriedly advised. Got it, Auntie. By the way, brother, I saved up some money and bought you a stylish pair of sunglasses. I'll show them to you later. Yang Jin said excitedly. I shook my head with a smile. Ah, Jin, sunglasses can block light, but they're nowhere near as effective as this satin. I can't wear them yet. Okay. Yang Jin looked a bit disappointed. But once my eyes are fully healed, I'll wear them out with you every day. I'll even buy you a pair so we can match. Yang Jin's eyes brightened again, and he gave a hearty nod. Also, Annie has arranged for your school transfer. When this semester starts, you can switch from the special school to a regular high school. Annie seemed to remember something and added, but are you really sure about this? Regular high schools and special schools are quite different. With your situation, if... There's no if, Auntie. I interrupted her. My eyes are better now, and if I want to get into a good university, I need to be on the same starting line as everyone else. Oh, you child. Even if you don't get into a good university, it's okay. Auntie will always support you. Brother, I can take care of you too. My body trembled slightly, and under the black satin, my eyes remained hidden. I pressed my lips together and forced a smile. I shook my head firmly. I didn't say anything, but both Yang Jin and Auntie could feel my resolve. Even the little black mutt nudged my ankle. Woof. Chapter 3. Knocking. Back in my room, I closed the door. I didn't turn on the light. It was late at night, and the starlight outside sprinkled across the floor. In the darkness, I sat at my desk and slowly removed the black satin from my eyes. In the mirror on the desk, a handsome young face was reflected. I looked good. If I took off the blindfold, tidied up a bit, and showed off my unapproachable, deep aura, I'd definitely be considered a school heartthrob. Unfortunately, the perpetual black satin and my disability overshadowed any potential I had. In the mirror, my eyes were closed. My brows were furrowed slightly, and my eyelids trembled as if struggling to open. Even my hands were clenched into fists, straining with effort. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. I trembled for a long time, and finally, unable to endure it, I suddenly relaxed, breathing heavily. Sweat trickled down my cheeks, and anger flared between my brows. So close, just so close. Why is it always just out of reach? When will I be able to open my eyes again and see this world for myself? I said I could see now, but I lied. My eyes couldn't open at all, not even a slit. But I wasn't entirely lying. Even with my eyes closed, I could clearly see everything around me. It was a strange sensation, like having eyes all over my body, perceiving everything in all directions, seeing more clearly and farther than before. I couldn't do this at first. For the first 5 years after I went blind, I was no different from other blind people, relying on sound and a white cane to navigate the world. But for some reason, starting 5 years ago, my eyes seemed to change, and I began to perceive my surroundings. Initially, I could only sense what was a few centimeters in front of me. Over time, my vision extended farther and clearer, and now, after 5 years, my perception range had reached 10 meters. For a normal person, 10 meters might be nothing, but for a boy who had lost his sight, those 10 meters meant everything. The most crucial thing was that my 10-meter range was unobstructed. In other words, within a 10-meter radius around me, I had absolute vision. To put it crudely, I could see through things. More elegantly, I could see every speck of dust drifting through the air, every part inside a machine, every little movement of a magician under the table. This ability seemed to stem from the eyes that had been closed under the black satin for 10 years. Despite having this almost supernatural power, I was still unsatisfied. The 10 meters of absolute vision was good, but I wanted to see the world with my own eyes. It was a young man's obsession. Although I failed to open my eyes tonight, I could clearly feel the moment of truly opening my eyes was not far off. After washing up, I got into bed as usual, preparing to sleep. The years of blindness had not been all bad. At least I developed a good habit of going to bed early. But as soon as I lay down, the image from my dreams resurfaced. Under the dark cosmic vault, the dead silence of the moon's surface, the grayish-white ground reflecting the faint starlight. In the largest and highest lunar crater stood a figure like a sculpture. The figure stood there silently, as if it had existed since the dawn of time. Its divine golden radiance shone, enough to make all living beings prostrate. Behind it, 6 enormous wings spread out, blocking the sunlight from behind, casting a massive shadow on the silver-gray ground. But what was truly etched in my mind, impossible to erase, were its eyes. Those eyes, burning with divine power, blazed like a furnace, as dazzling as the sun at close range. I saw those eyes, and in an instant, my world was plunged into darkness. 10 years ago, when I spoke the truth, I was diagnosed with a mental illness. But I knew better than anyone what was real and what was delusion. Since seeing the seraph on the moon, I knew this world was far more complex than it appeared. Slowly, I drifted into a deep sleep. Unbeknownst to me, as soon as I fell into slumber, 2 brilliant golden rays shot out from the slits of my closed eyes, flashing and disappearing. Tap, tap, tap. In the misty world, I walked alone. The surrounding fog swirled endlessly. Although I walked through the void, every step I took made a crisp sound, as if there were an invisible ground beneath my feet. I looked down at my body and sighed. Another one of these dreams. Knocking every night, it's so tiring, I muttered, shaking my head as I took a step forward. In the next moment, the fog around me swirled, revealing a strangely modern building in front of me. It was strange because, although it was a modern-style building, some details were imbued with a mysterious aura. For instance, the massive iron door engraved with deities, the light fixtures burning like fireballs, and the floating decorative tiles beneath my feet. It was as if modern architecture had mixed with elements from ancient myths, creating something both out of place and inexplicably beautiful. I recognized this building, and it looked extremely familiar. It was very similar to the Sunshine Psychiatric Hospital where I had lived for a year. The strongest evidence was that where the sign once read Sunshine Psychiatric Hospital, it had now changed to Asylum of the Gods. A bizarre place. I shook my head and walked up to the massive iron door. 5 years ago, not only did my body start to change, but my dreams did too. Every night for the past 5 years, I had the same dream, and the star of these dreams was always this mysterious Asylum of the Gods. The entrance to this psychiatric hospital remained tightly shut, no matter what. I had circled the asylum countless times, and the massive iron door was the only entrance. The surrounding walls weren't high, but the most absurd part was that every time I jumped, the height of the walls increased. As for brute force, even if I threw myself at the door until I fell apart, the iron door wouldn't budge. There seemed to be only one way to enter: knocking. I grabbed the round ring on the iron door, took a deep breath, and knocked heavily on the door. Clang dash. The sound echoed through the asylum like an ancient bell. The iron door shook but remained closed. Clang dash. Another knock, and the door still didn't open. I wasn't surprised or frustrated. I continued knocking patiently. Over these 5 years, I had deeply understood the rules of this dream. Aside from knocking, no other method would open the iron door. In this dream, it seemed I could only knock. Fortunately, I never got tired in dreams, or my body would have been exhausted long ago. So, I knocked diligently, like a hard-working laborer, through the entire night.